Welcome to the MSDW podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at msdynamicsworld.com. On this episode, I'm talking to Dynamics NAV and Business Central Pro, Jeremy Vyska. Jeremy has a new book launching as this episode is coming out. It's titled Your First 20 Hours with Business Central, a guide through basic use and setup of Dynamics 365 BC. And he tells me all about it, from the inspiration to the intended audience and a few other details. The book also fit into Jeremy's broader approach to working in the NAV and BC channel today, which has really changed over the last few years. For example, he's using a similar way of thinking in delivering services to help upskill NAV veterans who are transitioning to BC. And there are also interesting potential training and upskilling opportunities tied to the dreaded recruiting and headhunting space, where job openings rarely seem to match with skills of candidates. Finally, we talk about some of the human elements of business software that are changing or perhaps just underappreciated. How do users get more out of peer-to-peer relationships, for example? And how could Microsoft better adapt its own approach to community in the post-pandemic timeframe to better serve users? Hey, Jeremy, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Jason. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to doing this. I think this is a really interesting time to be talking. I know you have obviously a new project that we're going to talk about here, your upcoming new book. And you've also this is sort of a time of, broadly speaking, a bit of a time of transition for you, new role, new kind of work life for you. Can you tell us a little more about maybe who you are for our listeners who don't know you, and kind of how things have changed in your role in the last few months?
Sure thing. I've been working with the product now for a little over 20 years. I've been a developer and a fixer and an implementer. I got my MCT and at the time NAV. I'm old school in that I was trained at Atlanta, Georgia, by the team in the Navision headquarters there under the old ways, back when the SQL certifications were, these are all the reasons you shouldn't. But for the most part, I've been kind of playing that quiet role in the background with a lot of partners and ISVs, where I was playing a more supportive role. And that meant that I was, well, for one, very busy, but two, I was also not very engaged in the community as much as I would like to be, other than trying to answer the few forum questions here and there, occasional blog attempts and things like that. But this year, everything's gone virtual, and pandemic has shaken up a lot of opportunities and things like that. So what I've done is started a business with a partner here, and we have taken on the idea of trying to build a practice around being supportive to the community as a whole. Because right now, with the transition from the old Dynamics NAV space into the Business Central world, there's a lot of challenge for customers to do that. There's a lot of challenge around technical professionals to do that. And there's a lot of challenges around the whole market space to do that. So at the moment, I think there's a lot of pent-up need because, historically, we've had massive staffing shortages. We really need more people in the industry. And now all the people that we do already have are struggling a little bit to keep up. So it felt like a really good time to try to build a practice around how are we able to help and provide the help to most people instead of on a per project basis. And that underlying philosophy of what can we do to help is behind all of the projects that we're doing. And I'm looking greatly forward to some of the longer term ones coming out later this year.
That's interesting. I mean, can you give some examples of maybe how that's shaping maybe the differences of what you're doing now versus some of the work you've done in the past?
Sure. I mean, when I've worked with partners or with ISVs, I tended to be the sort of person that developers or consultants would turn to when they didn't have an answer to a question or a problem that they couldn't solve. And I found that those were always the most enriching conversations when I was teaching people into the industry, when I was cross-training people into different parts of the products and things like that. I found that was really, really rewarding compared to to implementing a chart of accounts for somebody again, or customizing another API to connect to an AP system. I found that the process of teaching and enhancing the skills of everyone around me was much more rewarding. And so to that end, I'm greatly enjoying that people encourage me to get involved with Dynamics Con this past March, which was last month as of the recording. And that was a grand time of just sharing lots of info about the things that I take for granted that everyone knows, that it turns out a lot of people don't know. And so there's obviously this need to fill a lot of informational gaps. And during Dynamics Con, there was a lot of feedback and a lot of chatter in some of the sessions between, where great business consultative people coming over from Great Plains or into the industry from clients were talking about how they found that it was really hard for them to get information about using the product, that all these great resources are out there if you're a technical or developer person, but they needed more and more content around the application itself. And that's what led to a month ago yesterday, the idea of starting to write a book, to go, okay, well, let's clear all of the assumptions and say, if you're starting from zero, how do you get to an operable Business Central system in the minimum number of steps?
Yeah, no, so I'm interested. It's interesting to hear that the Dynamics Con was such a big step for you. Was it? I mean, I know you've been writing your blog for a long time. I've certainly followed it and over time. But was that sort of a big moment in terms of the type of material you were presenting, or was it like your first first conference session?
I've done small group trainings and working with a couple of ISVs like Serenic with their Navigator product. I've done some speaking events for small crowds, but Dynamics Con was the first time that I've ever stepped onto a virtual stage to talk about the product to peers in the industry. And because of the pandemic, it leveled the playing field a little bit. A lot of MVPs and people that I've looked up to for a decade or more are suddenly all on the same playing field with me, that we're talking all virtually. And that has led to a lot of great conversations and connections that I'd never had before. And that's what, for example, led to setting up a Discord server for Business Central. We kind of use it as a virtual bar, so to speak, where, us BC professionals can just go hang out and chat about different topics. Sometimes we even jump into voice chats and just cook dinner together. It's been a lot of fun.
That is fun. That is cool. And yeah, I mean, I have to think that, as different, countries, sort of come out of pandemic, sort of postures and more in-person stuff is available. I really do wonder, how we can, part with, some of these virtual experiences, because they're so democratizing compared to in person. I mean, people who go to in-person events love them, but when it comes to sort of the accessibility, the bar is so much lower, and it's just, the accessibility is so much higher, I guess I should say, is probably the best way to, and I've heard this from people at Microsoft too. I mean, it's great to give people the opportunity to meet in person, but the ability to, sort of the value and the broad nature of things like virtual events, and even having, a well-run Discord server or some kind of online meeting place is huge. And I think it's really fundamentally changing people's outlook, hopefully.
Absolutely. I know I greatly enjoyed, while I was in the U.S. for a very long time, that it was delightful on the rare occasion where I could manage to get over to some of the events, since, pretty big place. It's sometimes a trip to go to an event. And I know when I flew over to Europe and moved here to Sweden, that it was fantastic that it became much more feasible for me to attend some of the great events that I knew were going on in this space as well. So I appreciate greatly the space that virtual conferences have added to the world and added to the accessibility. And I'm glad to think that that's going to be something that will remain, even if it's not in the way it has for the past year. There are a few different ecosystems and groups that have come out of the very difficult time that we've been through that I'm sure will continue to go beyond the end of the pandemic, that we will continue to do that because it's just, like you said, it's so democratizing. It's so easy to just get involved. And when you have time to participate, that's great.
Mm-hmm. We should probably, and as you mentioned, so you, just for a little bit more background, I think one of the things I first, maybe when I first started following your blog, you moved from the US, right, to Sweden quite a few years ago at this point. I was actually just looking back at your blog before we talked here, and it's at least 8 years ago.
It's coming up on, I believe, 7 this summer, so pretty close. Okay. Yep.
All right. And do you see yourself as sort of are you a full-time resident of Sweden now? Is that you consider that home permanently?
We have achieved citizenship here. So we are now dual citizens of US and Sweden. And a lot of it was a business decision to find work here. But the primary driver that had us looking is we wanted to give our kiddo the most opportunity in the future. So, as part of being dual US Sweden citizen, he's also a Nordic citizen. So he now has the opportunity when he gets to college age to be able to look at the world and go, where do I want to be? And a lot of options are open to him. So that's what we wanted to give is a strong option. And being able to work within the Microsoft Dynamics environment, the beauty is that you really can find a need wherever you want to go. And that's one of the things that I try to convey a lot to people who are considering coming into the space, or if you're trying to actively recruit people to come into the space, is remind people of the value that you're going to have in the market space. It's very global. It's very mobile. It's something that if you decide, hey, I want to go live in Malta, I'd like to enjoy that life. There's probably a partner there hungry for people.
Yeah. Yes, I bet. I'm guessing that that's true. And I think that's a great point because when it comes to new users or people who need to be trained and learn about what the product's all about, whether they're onboarding at a partner organization or whether they are part of a company that's deploying a Business Central solution, there is a certain amount of learning that goes into it, right? I mean, can you talk a little more about sort of maybe who some of those roles are, who you think might benefit from your new book?
Well, I think one of the areas that we're going to run into is there are going to be a lot of new users of Business Central coming onto the scene in an era where it wasn't the method where you had to go through an extensive ERP RFP process where a partner was speccing out, potentially months worth of implementation work. It's not that world anymore. It used to be, but it's not. We now do have the possibility, as unlikely as it might be, we have the possibility that a customer goes to their Office 365 portal and goes, what's this? And about 4 or 5 clicks later, they have a Business Central trial in their hands. Right. Now, I'm hopeful that we're going to continue to see that those people will be directed to a partner. And I think that's one of the things that they're going to be careful about with the new onboarding experience that they released earlier this month. Then we have all of those new users who are wanting to do as much as they can to minimize their costs. This is a really good way to do that. We have implementation and technical consulting type people that still need to know how the core mechanics of the system work. And a lot of developers who are being recruited into the space right now are very developmentally minded, maybe not necessarily super familiar with business processes and accounting practices and inventory management techniques. And so it's really important to me to find ways to create a lower cost, lower barrier entry to teach all of those different people, which are very different target audiences, all of those different people, some of the foundational basics, so that when they do have to spend time with senior people or spend money to buy the time of senior people, that they're getting the most value of it. Our knowledge has always been sold as a service. There are some partners out there who have created their services into products, the training materials. But what I'm thinking is that we need to take as many things as we can as products out of the service category, so that way we do lower the costs, but when we spend time with our customers, they're getting the most value. It would just be bananas for someone to pay me $2 a minute to explain fast tabs. So I think my vision of this is these are all the things that we have to have you learn. So let's figure out a good way to make that inexpensive for you, so that when we do get together, we talk about the posting group strategies that make sense for you, not what a posting group is.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, like you said, there's so much more you could spend that money on, those $2 a minute on, than that basic question. And I think there's plenty of debate to be had that's what's perhaps the difference between a successful deployment and an unsuccessful one, in terms of how well users feel that they've been prepared for this, to use the system, and how much the organization feels like it's getting out of it ultimately.
Absolutely. So this first run at things is to teach a lot of the basics, user interface stuff, all of the things that someone who is unfamiliar with the system needs to know to be a functional, basic citizen of the Business Central world. And my hope is that over time, I can develop some more nice, easy entry points to lots of other things. For example, one of my intentions for this year will be also to do some low cost, just tours of the different modules. Like, if you just need to know how the jobs module works in concept, just to hang together the flow of, okay, I need to know a little bit more about how planning works. I don't need you to walk me through every setup option, but just a tour that, after an hour of reading, I kind of get what it's supposed to do. And that way you can hang your knowledge off of some basic skeleton. And I think there's a lot of demand for that. As great as the Docs and the Learn platform are from Microsoft, those are deep dives into the process because they need to be. And I think there's some value to creating the high level views of all the different parts. And once you get that knowledge, then the content that's out there, Docs and Learn, and some of the upcoming skill up platforms from a Dynamics user group and a few other great training platforms that are coming onto the scene, then those are providing, again, more detailed value. Like, I would love to do some courses that are deep dives into topics, but it would be good if someone could pay a very low amount to cover all the basics first, so that they're getting the best value.
Have you had any sort of early readers or early response from I don't know, from customers, from other fellow professionals in the space?
I do have a couple of MVPs who have kindly been donating their time to do some read-throughs, and some of them are published authors themselves, and their feedback has been surprisingly glowing. Since I've not written anything before, I'm greatly appreciative of how much they've found. Any issues that they found in this process have all been minor, just basic language issues and grammar and various little fiddly things like that. So it has been a sort of wonderful process to kind of take what I thought would be, if I were to sit with somebody in 20 hours and go through everything I thought they needed to be able to do basic sales and purchases operations and get the system started from nothing, what would be the minimum amount of information that I think this person should have? And that has been received really, really well so far. My technical and grammar editing team, I think, wants to beat me about the head and shoulders a little bit because we started this project less than 30 days ago, and it's just about done now.
Yeah, that's very fast. I mean, what have you done to streamline it? Because when you talk about books, I mean, 30 days is it's like nothing.
I would say mostly it's just the fact that, you can't go anywhere at night. there's not much else that I can be doing right now, and that has led to sometimes some really focused periods where within a couple of days we're looking at almost 100 pages knocked out in no time, because it's all, like I said, it's information that everyone should have, but it's not complicated. It's important and foundational, but it's not complex. So it's been a lot of fun to explain some of those business processes in that way. I definitely will not take on a 30-day challenge again with writing an entire book, because 300 pages is roughly what we're looking to end up at, and that was too much in just this time period.
What about format wise? Is it going to be available as an ebook primarily? Do you foresee a hard copy version?
The very first release, which is going to be coming up, by the time the podcast airs, it will probably be available. That is being sold as an ebook exclusively for now. Within about a month or so, I do want to look at having some print options, because me personally, I find value in having a copy on a shelf. I just want to make sure that any offerings that we have like that are high enough quality. And
sure.
Globally accessible, because right now there's more and more markets coming online all the time that potentially could use a resource like this. So
you also mentioned you see a place for this book maybe on the shelf of headhunters. Can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah, although it kind of dovetails into a separate service that we're offering as part of that community supported structure. One of the things that we're trying to build a practice around is being advisors, not necessarily consultants in the traditional role of you're going to draft a scope of work, we will execute the work, and at the end you have a finished product or a completed project. Something that I've kind of put together and invented is this strategy of many people right now need just a period of time where they need a little bit of a boost. They're feeling like they're falling behind, or they are a small practice and they're on the same level as all of their coworkers, or they're independent and there's not really anyone they turn to except for blogs. How are you supposed to, if you're feeling falling behind, you're working with NAV almost exclusively, how are you supposed to catch up to the Business Central world? And to that end, what we're offering is a fixed price for a period of about 3 months, where we build a training plan across that 3 months where we do a little bit every week. So that way it fits around your billable hours. We can give assignments that you can go off and work on. And again, it's that what can you do that provides the highest value for the shortest period of time and shortest investment. It's a lot easier to go over a technical concept that's complex in that detail in, say, an hour phone call in a week, and then have someone go try it over the upcoming week. And that way, when we get together next time, if they got stuck or if they want to review, we can go through what maybe took them a few more hours to figure out. But then they've got the hands-on. So with that vision in mind of this advisory service, what I would like to see more of is many of the headhunters who are reaching out to me, the recruiting companies, they're trying their best to fulfill a lot of demand from a lot of placement. Many companies want to bring resources in-house, especially end users want to hire someone who knows the product to bring them on staff. But it's very difficult for those recruiters and those sort of clients to attract someone out of, what tends to pay a little bit more, the consultative partner practice. So how do you fit that need? Most people put together some sort of ad hoc strategy around how do we solve that need. Training internally. There are some practices out there that will do developer boot camps, for example. I don't think there's anyone doing application boot camps. So what do you do when you can't find somebody and you're at month 6 of trying to find just somebody to hire? what I'm hopeful is that we can start looking at, okay, maybe you can't get someone who's deep dive knowledge into Business Central, but there's someone out there that has knowledge of your industry. It's from someone that you trust, and you feel that if you invest some time and money into them, that they're going to stay, regardless of how attractive the industry might make it to move somewhere else or whatever have you. Retention is a real problem for sure. My hope is that those people will look at finding someone who's a good fit culturally and has all of the different skills that they need, but maybe isn't very strong or is completely unknown to Business Central. And they can utilize services like what we're offering, where for a period of time, they have a fixed price that they can say, yeah, this person maybe costs a little less, and I can pay these folks to get them up to speed, work with a partner to get them to get the project going. But then at the end of this process, they now have someone who is a trained up person on staff that they've invested in to bring up to the right knowledge level. And they've done that in a way that doesn't involve bits and pieces here and there. It's involved a very strategic plan to, this is the things that you need to know from a technical perspective. These are the different parts of the application that matter to your environment and what your company does, but does it in a way that is probably going to be less expensive than building that plan with a partner to do the same thing. And I think that really is an offering that I'm hopeful recruiters are going to be able to bring to customers as an alternate solution when they start getting to the point where they're going, are we ever going to find a resource that is going to be a good fit for us, skill-wise and all those sort of things? What can we do as an alternate strategy to get the resources we need rather than just hoping for another few months?
That's a fascinating idea. Have you had a good response? Any receptive headhunters to this model, this idea?
We definitely had a few who were curious to know more, because I certainly get enough inquiries every week, and it is fantastic to be able to say something other than "No, thank you, I'm not looking at this time."
Right.
So I admit I'm hopeful that I can build a little bit of a portfolio of success stories over the coming year, because I would love to be able to give to many of my peers in the industry, hey, maybe you don't have an interest right now in all these offers coming your way, but here's something that you can say, this is something you could do instead. And I think the fact that so many recruiters are going to continue to have challenges over the next several years, at least, trying to fulfill a very difficult role to fill, giving them another tool that makes the client satisfied with something that they're offering is, I hope, very attractive.
You talked about the chat server. Are there other ways that you see the community kind of evolving that you're keeping your eye on? I mean, the one thing that you kind of touched on that I was thinking of was sort of the I guess I'd call it the separation, or to me, from the outside, it sort of feels like a bit of a divergence. There's sort of the developer conversations that always go on in the NAV and Business Central space that are very, very, very focused on development issues and techniques and new ideas and so forth. And then there's sort of the functional side with financial management or manufacturing or what have you. But I don't know. Part of what I hear from you is a bit of bringing, a little more of a holistic view, perhaps. I don't know. Are there anything else about that, or other things that are sort of shifting in the community that you're paying attention to?
Well, I have this interesting sort of viewpoint in the dynamic space. I'm only familiar with Business Central, and what sort of results in that is that solutions and ideas and communities that grow from beyond Business Central into the space sometimes catch me a little off guard because, myopic single product sort of view. And solutions and ideas that bring new things into the Business Central space are coming our way. Microsoft, for example, they're bringing a whole new look at community building around user groups and things like that. Being who they are, they have to build solutions that can't be specific to a single product. They have to make solutions that work well across the platform and across the ecosystem. So one of the things that I see still potential for in the community space is while we do need to look more holistically within the product, I think it's interesting to see that a lot of the community efforts that I've seen growing and gaining initiative in the past year are focused on cross-product community development, not within the space. And what that has meant is that, for example, in Business Central world, most of the tools and resources that we would use to find answers, whether we be developers or consultants, are pretty static, meaning that, there are 2 or 3 major forums, and they are full of great content. You will still find, people who are going, hey, this question you answered 17 years ago was exactly what I needed today, which is amazing and it's wonderful. But other than, some of the conversations moving to Twitter, because the development environments or development world is very active on Twitter for whatever reason. Other than some of those new things, there haven't been a lot of foundational shifts in how the community comes together in the Business Central space. So it'll be interesting to see over the upcoming year or two, as a lot of these larger community building initiatives start to incorporate Business Central into that space, how that absorption kind of is going to go. Are the tools going to feel like they're still valuable for Business Central oriented people, or are they going to feel too generic? And that's going to be a real challenge. But at the same time, one of the things I do think about a great deal is consultants and application-oriented people. A lot of the ways that the product work isn't evolving in the same speed as the way that the technology underlying Business Central evolves. So what I get at the feel for, and this could be wrong, what I get the feel for is a lot of the developers are very, very vocal because all the time they're having to learn something new. Every few months, something pretty big is changing. The practice over the past few years has been foundational as a shift for developers. So they have to be loud and they have to chat and they have to communicate. And I feel like most of the feedback I'm hearing in the application space are from other Dynamics product consultative people coming into the Business Central space. Some of the folks that I've enjoyed chatting with the most in the past 6 months are GP application people learning BC. Because they don't have the foundational knowledge and the background. So they're learning everything fresh and new. But for them, they're the people that I'm hearing the most of. There aren't a lot of application-oriented knowledge learning resources for us. Because I don't think that a lot of the long experience consultative people in the space, they haven't felt the need of why would I cover how to set up an account schedule again? That's common knowledge. It's been the same way for 15 years. It's just a new paint job. The UI is fantastic in Business Central for sure, but process-wise, it's the same. So I think there's going to be an interesting shift of what sort of resources are also coming into play over the next year upcoming from the application side. And since that's coming right at the same time as the new community structures, I don't know what to even guess at that's going to be coming our way.
And that also just makes me think of the fact that, like you were talking about with the new community structure. I mean, one of the leading points that we've heard Microsoft make about their efforts there is I guess you'd say, divergence that they're detecting, where they're adding new customers, new Business Central customers, and new customers in other platforms, primarily SaaS, and they're not seeing sort of user group engagement grow. They're not seeing more growth in community that should go along with that kind of customer based growth, right? And perhaps that's maybe another related issue or concern that some of these community efforts will fix, but I mean, will only fix if it actually meets those people where they're at, that they feel like there's a good reason to get involved and something that they can get value out of. But I think that also comes down to Microsoft, sort of, that's one of the big questions when it comes to community. How much will Microsoft, the company, sort of put its weight behind this and really try to encourage it, and how much really falls to partners and evangelists and people like you who have you have a vision for it, which I think is maybe what sort of draws me to some of the stuff you're saying here so much, that you actually you can sort of see where this could go that could be really helpful.
Oh, absolutely. And I know I was just in a meeting recently with Microsoft talking to some of the user group communities about how they're creating tool sets. And one of the things that I think Microsoft has to be very careful of, based on what I'm hearing from them, is that they have to be very careful that they don't want to disrupt the user communities that have developed in a way that harms them at all. They want to, it gives the impression that what they want to do is they want to be able to help lift those communities up, to make them more visible, to give them more support in ways that they can start to direct more people to be more engaged. And I think that's a good thing. I'm curious to see where that will go. I haven't had a lot of past experience where my customers, when I was working either in partner practices or working directly at customer locations, I haven't had a lot of experience where customers wanted to be engaged with other customers that use an ERP system, that wasn't attractive enough of a reason for them to become engaged with the community. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of things develop out of that, because it's a good thing. Absolutely. I think people that are willing to participate in those group communities can bring a lot to the table. Like, being able just to answer those quick questions of, hey, I'm trying to build a Power BI against my dashboard. How did you bring in your last year? I've got customers that are fantastic users of Power BI against Business Central warehousing. One of my customers right now, he was showing me around a Power BI where he built a heat map of the value of all the different bins in his warehouse so that he can move high value items out of the corners of shelves to reduce potential breakage, because in their case, it's significantly expensive items. So being able to get someone like that to be a part of a user community group where people could potentially ask him, how did you do that? What tools did you use to get started? That's very, very valuable. And I hope that what Microsoft's initiatives are doing is going to attract people like that to participate. So we'll see.
Yeah, that I think that's the sort of the ideal would be that as companies are onboarding onto the product, they're also getting a great pitch from Microsoft. I think that's what Microsoft would probably plan, that they're also then sort of shuttling them directly into a place where they can find those groups that best match them geographically, or maybe if it's a vertical type of non-geographic group, perhaps. I don't know, but I think that's right. And I think, I don't know, this is probably a whole other conversation, but I think the extent Microsoft wants to directly encourage those customers to do it, and I don't know if they're going to really count on partners at all to have any role in lending that encouragement. Some partners are very supportive of it, but maybe you were suggesting this, I don't know, but I think others, it's an afterthought at best. That whether their clients get involved in a user group doesn't necessarily help them. As they see it, I think it does help them, but in most cases. But yeah, so I see that the sort of Microsoft to customer conversation being an interesting sort of channel going forward here.
Absolutely. And one of the things I have heard from some of the different Microsoft teams, and I've pushed vocally for, is I think there's a lot more opportunities to create sort of mentoring relationships. And a lot of times people hear that and they think only about, professionals, consultants helping consultants and developers helping developers. But there's a lot of opportunity to create business mentoring relationships between customers as well. Most of the customers I've worked with would be perfectly willing to spend a little time here and there with someone who's just getting started with Business Central to play a mentorship role, to volunteer some of their time to another company to say, if you just need a friend to kind of chat about what you're going through with trying to figure out your inventory costing, we can go grab lunch sometime and talk through some of the pain pressure points you have. So I think there's some good opportunity in the user group space too, to not only look at mentoring from a profession point of view, but also start building some of those cross customer relationships. And those are the sort of things that really, I think, will keep those users happier longer. Because, and a lot of partners do lose sight of this, a customer that's unhappy with the experience they're getting with a partner isn't thinking, oh, this partner isn't good. They're thinking, oh, this partner isn't doing a great job, but this product is terrible. They're thinking, oh, this industry isn't for me. So when we don't have a customer feel like they're getting the best experience out of the product, they don't always look to another partner to say, maybe with someone else, this tool will be what we need. They're going to look at what are other software solutions, not what are other partners. So there's real harm from an industry perspective when partners don't deliver on customer expectations, or the customer's expectations were unrealistic of any partner, because that can happen. So the more that we can have customers feel the connections to these tools are still very good, even if my experience with them so far to date isn't, they're more likely to willing to give another partner a try rather than just go, well, maybe IBM can solve my issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. And that was really the last thing I had in mind to ask you about, was this disconnect between, or trying to kind of keep an eye on how is customer satisfaction doing among Business Central companies that do deploy Business Central. I think it's a big question. And, to the extent that more customers get involved, talking to the community, hearing from others in the community, I can't help but think that will start to, bring a sort of sense of balance, or a sort of sense of more realistic expectations, whether it's you expect too little or you expect too much, or you blame the partner versus the product versus versus your team. Those are all complex questions, and communication's probably the only thing that can sort of, at least at a broad scale, bring it back to, and data, bring it back to kind of reality.
Absolutely. So we'll see over the upcoming year to 2 years as a lot of the user group stuff comes into play, and as we come back out of the pandemic to see, what tools and platforms stay virtual, what goes back to physical meetings and things like that. There is definitely a lot of wait and see how that's going to go. But I think there are significant opportunities right now to improve things, so that when we do come out of this pandemic mode where we have to all stay inside, be safe, that when we come out of that, what is that future going to look like? And I think Microsoft picked a great time to be starting to think really hard about that, and how to better be prepared for whatever comes next.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Great. Well, I think maybe we're a little ahead of time in terms of where people can actually find the book. Is that right? Or is there information you can share now?
Sparebrain.com. You'll find it right on our front page. That would, depending on the air date of this podcast, it's coming out on April 26th. We're launching it late Sunday night so that Monday morning people can start ordering. So not March, April.
Yeah.
Pandemic.
Yeah.
So yeah, April 26th, Monday morning, bright and early, they'll be able to place the order. And the platform that we've gone through, Gumroad, is pretty fantastic. The checkout process was super fast. I've bought ebooks through that before, and you get an ebook in very, within minutes. And one of the other things I've really enjoyed about this platform, if partners find value in this book and they are okay with this, they can sign up to be an affiliate and get a percentage of the cut when their users buy it. So it becomes something that a partner can consider not to be a threat. It can be an asset that they can use to go, let's give the user something that when I walk out of the door or when I leave that Teams meeting, there's still something in their hand that they can go back to and go, wait, what are the tools that I should be thinking about to plan my implementation? What are all the steps that I should be giving some consideration to? And there are definitely books that cover those topics in more depth. I mean, Eric's field guide is very extensive, covers lots and lots of great topics for users in great depth. And I know that there are some books out there as well around implementation strategies, but I think those are more aimed at the consultative partner practice than the end user. So my hope is that this is an asset that a partner would be willing to buy and then give to their customers or have their customers purchase. So that way they can start, instead of from zero, they're already on the road towards success. And that should be something that any partner would find some value in. And to sign up for that is right on the same page as buying the book. There's a little link you can go to and sign up to be an affiliate. Anyone can sign up for that. You don't have to be a partner. You can be an independent consultant as well. No problem there.
Excellent. Well, I'll be looking forward to that, and obviously we'll put some links into the podcast description for this. I've seen a little bit of the book. You showed me just like a hint of it, I think, as it was starting to come together. It looked great. The chapter or two that I saw, and it certainly lined up with what you've said here. So I'm looking forward to it. I look forward to continuing to sort of follow how it evolves, and as you get it out into the marketplace. And congratulations on putting it together so quickly and with such a clear vision for it.
Absolutely. So I'm looking forward to writing a few more later this year at a little bit more relaxed and sane of a pace.
Yeah, Jeremy, thanks so much for being here. It was a lot of fun talking to you.
Absolutely. And I look forward to creating all sorts of new fun things that we can chat about throughout the year.
This has been another episode of the MSDW podcast. My thanks once again to Jeremy Vyska for joining me today. If you want to check out his book, we do have a link in the podcast description. You can find it at sparebrained.com/books. And the title, once again, is Your First 20 Hours with Business Central. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me by email, jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Please also do follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.